That, yes, if you heard that. So, okay, sorry about that. Let me get back on track. Okay, so we'll talk about why variety is important. Why is your toddler a picky eater? What is the science behind that? How'd you get lucky and get a picky eater? We'll talk about tips for introducing new foods, how to make sure that your child is getting enough to eat, because I know that's a common question that, worried that your child is getting enough. And then how to implement structure, routine, and familiarity, all three, which are super important with helping support your picky eater. And then we'll make sure to have a chance for questions and just kind of a closing statement. And then I'll hang out for a while if you all have specific questions about your child. Sound good? Everyone can hear me okay? Everyone's doing okay? Okay, cool. So fun facts. I don't know how fun these are, but we're gonna make this super fun. So first, the average age for a picky eater is 2 to 5. So I'm assuming, do we all have kids in that age range? Yes. Okay, so this is the prime time for picky eating, but there's high hopes that, once your child, gets out of that age range, the chances of them wanting or being able to try new foods will really, really get a lot better. On average, it takes 10 to 15 tries before a child might choose to accept a new food. So let's talk about that for a second. That's 10 to 15 different times of introducing the same food before your child might choose to even try a bite of it. That's a lot of times, okay? So really the reason I say this is not to give up on your picky eater. And just because they've never tried something before, or they haven't been willing to try it, doesn't mean they won't try it today and they won't surprise you. And so just realize that, on average, that's how long it takes for something to become familiar to them. And so it's not so scary, and they might choose to even just try a little bite, which is a success. As a parent, modeling good behavior is always something that's super important with any nutrition related topic. They really look up to you, whether or not it seems like it. And so they're going to notice if, no one around them, none of their siblings or parents are eating the broccoli, they're not going to want to eat the broccoli. So just modeling good behavior and eating what they're eating is really important in helping with this. And then also it's normal for your child to like food one day and dislike it another day. So I know it's frustrating, but if your child, I guess broccoli is my food of the day, but if your child decides to try broccoli today, and that's a really big success and you're really excited about it, and then tomorrow they say they won't like it, then just realize that's a normal thing. And the fact that they tried it the first time makes them a lot more likely to try it again in the future. All right. Okay, so raise your hand. Has anyone heard of MyPlate before? Is that familiar? Cool, awesome. If you've been into one of my classes before, I talk about this in every class because it's just so important. Yeah, Lucinda, do you have a question? Feel free to unmute yourself if you do. So as far as MyPlate goes, MyPlate is kind of the new version of the food pyramid. So if you grew up learning about the food pyramid, this is what it has turned into. And it's up in that visual in the corner. Pretty much MyPlate, it shows exactly what your plate should look like at every meal in order to be completely balanced. So it encompasses 5 food groups. There's fruit, vegetable, grain, protein, and dairy. And this is exactly kind of the portions or the amount of, space it should take up on your plate in order to make sure that your child gets what they need. This is also the same for adults. But as far as the portion size goes, obviously kids need less. And so since we're talking about our kids today, this is all just for child nutrition. We'll talk about adult nutrition in other classes, but these are the portions that they need of each food group every day. Okay, so with vegetables, they need 1 to 1.5 cups a day. Fruit, same thing. Grains, they need 3 to 5 ounces, and we want half of those grains to be whole grains. And then protein, 2 to 4 ounces, and dairy, 2 to 2.5 cups. So I know sometimes, and this doesn't need to be exact, you don't need to measure everything out, but just to visualize it a little bit better, 1 cup is kind of, if to visualize it, is like a tennis ball or a baseball. Okay, so just if you think of it that way. And then 3 ounces of grain or protein, that would be like the size of a deck of cards. So just so you have kind of an idea of what that looks like. But this is what your child needs in order to, grow and develop in the best way they can. And it's really important that this is why we're talking about picky eating, so they have more variety. So why is child nutrition important? It helps children grow and develop. This is the prime time for, growing and developing, and developing healthy habits. We also want them to be at a healthy weight. We shouldn't be putting our kids on the scale by any means, but we do realize that poor eating habits now can lead to obesity later. And obesity as a child does carry into adulthood. So if our child's at a healthy weight now, or they're healthy now, then the more likely they'll be healthy later, and they won't have to deal with health-related problems related to being overweight or being obese. So we want the best for our kids, right? And so it's just important to develop those things now, so they have those healthy habits going forward. Let me know if I'm talking a little bit too fast. We have a lot to go through, and I know I started a little bit late, so that's why I'm doing that. But if you need me to slow down or if you need anything, just unmute and let me know, okay? Okay. Has anyone heard of the eat the rainbow statement? Yeah, eat the rainbow. So that is completely true. We want to have as many colors as possible. And the reason is more colors equals greater nutrition. So this is actually kind of cool. Each color has different benefits. And so that's really cool. That's why if we're always eating the same color food, not only is that really unappetizing, if everything is white on our plate, our kids aren't going to want to eat that, but also we're only getting certain nutrients, vitamins, and minerals with that. So each color provides different health benefits, and that's why making our plate as colorful as possible is the best thing to do. So we're going to dive into kind of each color. You don't need to memorize these, but this is just to show that each color has different important health benefits. And then just so I kind of already mentioned this, but choosing brightly colored foods may increase your child's willingness to try new things. So like I said, if you have a plate and it is all white, so it's cauliflower and mashed potatoes and a chicken breast, all about the same color, right? That's not very appetizing, and that's not going to get your child's interest. And right now we're talking about, getting your kid excited about food, making them want to eat, and that's not going to do that. And so instead, swapping some things out. Maybe instead of cauliflower, you change it to broccoli. And maybe instead of mashed potatoes, you change it to sweet potatoes. Now, instead of everything being one color, now we have orange, green, and white. And that's gonna really make it more likely that your child chooses to try something. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, cool. So why eat red foods? Red foods have actually shown to reduce risks of several types of cancer, which is pretty cool. And they have those things called antioxidants, which we probably have heard a lot. We have these things in our body called free radicals, and they're not good for us. They cause damage to our cells, and antioxidants protect us from those. So the more antioxidants, the better, and red foods have a lot of those. Okay, yellow and orange foods. Sorry, that's cut off a bit. These contain vitamin A and vitamin C, which helps maintain eye health. If you've heard of eating carrots helps your eyes, that's why. It also helps our immune system. We often hear to drink orange juice or have citrus, which contains vitamin C. And then it promotes healthy bone development, obviously super important with your kids at this point in their life. And then also reduces the risks of many types of cancers. All right, next one, white green foods. These tend to be high in the vitamins K and B, as well as folate. You might have known this when you were pregnant, that folate is really important to have during that period of time, but also all the time. And then it helps the body use the energy from the foods we eat. It helps our brain, nerves, and muscles function. And actually, vitamin K is really important for blood clotting. And then purple and blue foods, they protect our cells from damage. It helps reduce risk of stroke, cancer, and heart disease. And white foods. These help actually lower cholesterol and blood pressure, protects it against cancer and heart disease. And then bananas and potatoes specifically help with our heart and muscles. So this is just, just to give you an idea how each color has different health benefits, okay? Okay, now let's head back. So that's showing why variety is important. Now let's talk about why is your child a picky eater? And again, I'm gonna keep saying this, that it is normal and that's okay. And I don't want anyone to feel like it's their fault, but there's so much you can do to help support that. Just like how it takes time and patience to develop your child's physical, mental, and emotional development, it takes time and patience with eating too. And I think oftentimes we feel like it needs to happen right away. And I realize that this topic can be frustrating and it can be difficult to deal with because we want our child to be healthy and we want them to eat. So when they're not doing that, it's hard. But just realizing that really there's no miracle thing to say regarding this topic other than being patient with your child and realizing that it's not going to happen overnight, but it does take a little bit of time and there's ways to kind of speed up the process. And this is kind of interesting too, the science behind it. Does anyone have a child who is more likely to eat fruits rather than vegetables? Yeah. And there's a reason behind that actually. Kids are actually born with a taste for sweet. And that's why they're more likely to start eating fruits before vegetables. And then it takes a little bit longer for them to develop the taste for sour and bitter foods, which are kind of what vegetables are. So just realizing that that's kind of the science behind why they're a little bit more likely to eat fruits before vegetables. Nichelle, I saw that you raised your hand. Do you have a question for me?
No, I was raising it as in, yeah, she likes eating.
Oh, perfect. Okay, awesome. I just want to make sure. Thank you. All right, so that's a little bit of explanation as to why it's happening. Also, we are afraid to say no, and this is not a bad thing, especially in our culture. It is feeding our kids is a way that we show them that we love them and that we care about them. And so if our child doesn't want to eat what we're making, but they want to eat something else, it's hard for us to say no, right? Because we want them to be happy and we want them to know we care about them. And so that's an important thing to consider, but also realizing that sometimes saying no now helps them in the future. And so there's a balance there. And it doesn't mean they can never have the things that they're asking for, but we'll kind of talk a little bit more about that when we start talking about where to go from here. And also we feel like we don't have the time, right? We don't want to have a tantrum. But as far as having good fuel, and that's how I like to describe healthy eating. We need good fuel, just like in a car, we need good fuel in order to make it somewhere. We need good fuel, as in healthy foods, to be our best selves. And so children need fuel to thrive, and it's really important that we make time to address this matter. And so they feel like their best selves. Okay. Oh, sorry guys, I'm having a little bit of technical. Okay, there we go. Okay, and it's important to stay balanced. So there's overnutrition and there's undernutrition, both which cause problems, vitamin, mineral, protein deficiencies. Undernutritions mean we're not getting enough of the good things, and overnutrition means we're getting too much of the bad things. So both things aren't where we want to be, and we want to be balanced. And so kind of want to start there. Now, I want you to feel really inspired. That was kind of a downer. Now we're going to start talking about what can you do after this class? What can you do at home today? What can you start doing right now? It's probably not going to be easy and it might take a little bit of time, like I said, but it'll definitely be worth it and you'll feel a lot better, I'm sure. Now, I want to go ahead and get on top of this question because I get this question every time I teach this class with parents worried that their child isn't getting enough. Like if I say no, that they can't have something that they want to eat, they're not going to eat. And then it's worrisome because they're not eating at all, and we don't want them to be hungry. So that's a really valid concern. And this is kind of my answer to that, that children won't starve themselves. We need to trust our children that they know when to eat and when they're hungry. So actually, when children are really good about this, actually, and as we age, we lose a little bit of this, but kids are really good at picking up on those body cues of when we need to eat and when we need to stop eating, right? And so we kind of lose that. But right now we need to trust that they know those signals, that they know if when they're hungry enough that they'll eat. So unless your child has a true diagnosed eating disorder, they will not starve themselves, and they will eat if they really do need to eat. And so I just want to put that out there so you don't have to be so worried about it, that your child knows. They know what they need. And actually, this is really important too. So I think sometimes when let's say we put a plate down for them to eat at dinner, and then it seems like they just picked at it, like hardly anything was eaten from it. Then we get worried that they didn't get enough to eat. But oftentimes we think about it we're giving them an adult-sized portion, and we're thinking that they need to be eating as much as we need to be eating, and that's just not true. They need a lot less than us because they're littler. And so a quick rule of thumb is 1 tablespoon of food per year of age from each of the food groups at meals. So whoa, that is a lot. So let's break it down. So let's say your child do we have any 3-year-olds? Yeah, okay. So let's say your child's 3. That means that they need 3 tablespoons of each food from each food group at lunch and dinner. Does that make sense? So 3 tablespoons, if you think about it, is not that much food. And if we put that on a plate, it wouldn't seem like a lot, but that's all they truly need. And so just realizing that they're probably getting that. And in our eyes, we feel like they need more than that, but that's just a quick thing to think about. So, if they're 3, they need 3 tablespoons, 4, they need 4 tablespoons, and so on. Does that make sense to everyone? Questions before I go on? Are we good? Okay. All right. So now that you know, what can you do? So this is the fun part where we talk about tips and tricks. And definitely please unmute yourself if you have comments, if you've tried some of this. I would love to hear your thoughts. The first thing, you're gonna be like, what? Is don't call your child a picky eater. And I know this class is titled Picky Eaters, but the reason I say that is because when we label our child as a picky eater and they hear us talking to other people that they're a picky eater, they start thinking of themselves that way, that they're a picky eater. And then they're more likely to not try things. So it actually makes the cycle worse. And so realizing, like, just, not using that terminology around them, not labeling them as a picky eater is the best way to go. So just kind of realize that the next time you're talking about them to their teacher, to a colleague, that just not using that term. I would recommend that. Also, one of the best tips and tricks is we want them to be hungry at mealtime, right? Because we want them to eat, and we want them to eat healthy foods. And I know I was this way when I was little. I just snacked all day. We call that grazing. We kind of snack like all the time. And I think that's common when, kids are at home. And if they're doing that, they're not going to have a big appetite at meals, and then they're definitely not going to eat. And so if your child's hungry in between mealtime, offering them water instead of milk or fruit juices, because that's not going to fill them up, and then cutting down on the snacks. So it's actually recommended that you have, 2 to 3 snacks a day. But if you have a picky eater, we might even want to do less than that. We just don't want them, to be full, and then they're not going to want to come to the table at all, or they're just not going to want to eat. So just cutting down on that stuff and offering water and things that aren't going to fill them up. Also making food fun. So you can be creative with this, whether it's making their plate colorful, or maybe it's using a cookie cutter to cut out, their sandwich, or maybe it's making a face on their pancake in the morning. or anything like that. Even something I've found that kids really like is dips. So if you have a plate of vegetables on the table, they may not want to eat it. But if you make like a homemade dip, and actually in my Kids in the Kitchen class, we made for fruit, we made like a yogurt dip, which is really healthy and really easy to make. It's just 3 ingredients. The chances of them eating the fruit, it like went up significantly, and that actually really surprised me. But even just something as simple as that may really help. So just making food fun and letting them help you with that.
Then they just eat the dip.
Oh, well,
That's
if
it.
that's the case, maybe you want to stay away from the dip, or letting them know that they can only have the dip if they have it with the fruit or the vegetable. So framing it that way too. But yeah, I can definitely see that happening as well.
One thing I actually found that works really well for making the food fun. It only works with limited foods, but especially when we do tacos, if I give them their own little piece of tortilla, their own little bit of meat and cheese and everything, and let them put it together themselves,
Yes.
they're usually a lot more likely to eat it. Even if all they do is they just put cheese in the tortilla, they're
Mhm.
still more likely to at least eat that
Yes.
than if I'd made it myself and given it to them.
Okay, you are the best. That's like a great segue, because that's really true. If we involve our child in the smallest way in the preparation of the food, they're going to want to try it. So that's such a great point. Even if, like when I was little, my job was setting the table, and I just knew that was my job. And even something as simple as that, it makes them feel like they were involved in the process. Or if they wash off the fruit and vegetable, or even if they help you at the grocery store, or if they're a little bit older and they can help you make the food, any way that you can help them be involved, they're going to feel a sense of accomplishment with that, and then they're going to want to eat it. So thank you so much for that. That's a great comment. And so, yep, that's our next one. If they're at the grocery store with you, encouraging them to try a new food to try is also a great way. Because then when you get home, they're obviously gonna want to try that. So maybe encourage them to try a new fruit or vegetable that's kind of unique. And then, okay, be honest, raise your hand if you sometimes make more than one meal at lunch or dinner time. We have some no's. Yeah, sometimes. Okay, so it's hard. It's really hard, but trying to have everyone eat the same thing at meals is the best way to do it. So if your child knows that you will make something that they would like if they don't want that meal, then they're never going to want to eat that meal. If they know that that chicken nuggets is always an option or pasta is always an option, they're not going to want to eat that meal. So really try your best to prepare one meal and to start getting your child to realize that's the option. For that meal, that's the option. And they can pick at it, they can eat what they want from it, but you're not going to make them something in addition to that meal. They're going to start realizing that, that they're going to be hungry if they don't eat it. And so they're more likely to eat it. So we call it being a short order cook. Don't do that. Just make one meal. It's going to be easier on you too. Just make one meal, and it might take a little bit of adjustment, especially if your child's used to having multiple options. But having everyone eat the same thing at the table really can make a huge difference. Has anyone found that? Anyone want to comment?
I've done that a couple of times, but it's kind of hard because I'll do like a couple meals for the week, so she knows that I'm making the other options, because it's kind of, I'm just trying to get all the meals done.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Sometimes she wins.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes, it's hard. And like I talked about before, it's like worth sometimes to us just not going through that tantrum. But even letting them know, even if they know you have other options, being like, I'm not warming anything else up. Like this is the option, and just kind of being a little bit stricter with that sometimes will help. But I know it's a process, and doing a little bit at a time until you get where you want to be is a good thing. So is a success. Okay, what are some more tips? Try preparing foods in different ways. This is really simple, but it's important. So for instance, I like raw broccoli, but I'm not a big fan of cooked broccoli. And your child might feel the same way. Or opposite, if you've only given them raw broccoli, maybe they liked cooked broccoli. So just like trying, just because they haven't liked a food before, preparing it in a different way may be the thing that makes them like it. Because sometimes cooking something makes it a little sweeter. Maybe you try cooked carrots if they don't like raw carrots. So just kind of playing with that. They may not even realize it's the same food, but that's something I would recommend. Okay, and then keep presenting, not pushing. This is really important. We really want kids to have a positive relationship with food, and we want mealtime to be a positive experience. So if they sit at the table and they know that they can't leave the table until they eat, it's gonna start becoming anxiety inducing, and that's not what we want with food. So we never want to make them eat anything, but we do want to encourage it and present it and keep offering it. But if we tell them you can't leave the table until you eat it, now mealtime is not fun anymore. And we don't want that with food. Also, the way, and I'm sure you know this, the way you say things to your kids makes a huge difference. So something as simple as, hey, Johnny, do you want broccoli? And if he says no, well, that's the end of that conversation, right? But if you change it to, hey, Johnny, would you like carrots or broccoli for dinner? Okay, now it's completely changed because now your child feels like they have options. Make sure it's two things that you have on hand. They feel like they have a little bit of freedom in making a decision, but you're okay with both answers. Like you're okay with either answer. Does that make sense? So I'll actually send out a document at the end of today's class with some kind of examples of the way we say things to our kids, but something as simple as that, it gives them freedom to choose. So I think that's really important. Yeah, question?
Yeah, my son just likes to run off from the table, so we have a 1-bite rule. Is that okay? Like just because he'll run off because he doesn't want to sit at the table.
Yeah, and I definitely get that. I think that that's okay. Just because we're not, has anyone heard of like the Clean Your Plate Club? That's kind of what I'm talking. Yeah, I grew up with that. So pretty much what that means is you can't leave the table until you've eaten everything on your plate. And that's not something we recommend anymore. But as far as the 1-bite rule, it's not like that. So I think that's an okay place to start. So I wouldn't, if that's what's working for him right now, I wouldn't,
it's more to keep him at the table, not so much try the food, but to keep him from running off.
Yes. And even if your child does not want to eat, even if they tell you that they're not hungry, that they don't want to eat a meal, if they know that they need to at least sit with you, I think that's a really good thing to put in place, that they need to be sitting at the table. Then they'll probably take a couple of bites, but whether or not they eat, making it a rule that they need to be sitting with you, I think is an okay rule to have. Yeah, thank you. Do I have another question? Feel free to just yeah.
I was just gonna add, my kids do the same thing. They try to run away.
Yeah.
So we bought one of those little sand timers, like that you would use for like a game. We bought one on Amazon. So it's like 5 minutes. They have to sit there until the sand runs through, but then they can get up afterwards, whether they ate it or not. But they have to sit
Sarah.
the sand timer.
Yeah, that's a really creative idea. And they know that ahead of time that's gonna happen.
We tried using like the microwave timer, but then they would hear it beep and they'd be like, oh, time to get up, whether they were still eating or not. So a silent timer.
I love it. Thank you so much for commenting on that. That might help someone else. So thank you.
Yeah, I hope it does help.
Yeah. Awesome, guys. Okay, so let's keep going. Okay, this is also something that's important. We don't want kids to start thinking of food as there's good food and bad food, right? And so rather than asking your child if they like something, because then if it's no, they start associating that as they don't like it, they won't try it. Instead, ask them about it. Well, what did it taste like to you? Or what did the texture feel like in your mouth? Or what was the color of it? And making it more of a learning experience. I think that's a great way to frame that rather than do you like it, because they might not always not like it. And so again, just the way we're saying things can make a big difference. And then, okay, last time I taught this class, this was like a huge thing, but really trying not to use food as a reward or punishment. And it's the same idea that I was just talking about. If we use food as a reward, the food that we're giving them as a reward, they start to associate as that's the good food. And then the punishment food, same thing, that's the bad food. And we don't want them to associate foods in that way. So you can use other things as a punishment or reward. I don't like the word punishment, but you can use other things as a reward, like, you know, toys or, you know, anything, but I just wouldn't put food in there. Just, again, we don't want to associate food in that way. Something that I did in my kids' wellness class is giving kids the idea that there are green, yellow, and red light foods, just like a stoplight. That green foods are really healthy foods like fruits and vegetables that we can have all the time because they're really healthy for us. Yellow foods are, you know, we can have sometimes. We can have everything sometimes. And those are, you know, like our waffles and our yogurts, or yogurt should be all the time, but pancakes and waffles and that type of thing. And then our red light foods like candy and soda, that's for really special occasions. So we want to think about it. We want to stop for a second and think about it. If it's a special occasion, that's, so kind of framing it in that way, that there's not good and bad, but there's ones that we can have all the time. And then there's ones that we can save for when it's special. Sound good? Okay, so here are just some ideas. We talked about the dip. We talked about making the plate colorful. We talked about making like fun little faces. This is actually the teddy bear toast on the bottom right. We actually did in the classroom last year with them, and it was a huge hit. And it's like, even if your child doesn't like bananas, but they saw it on their teddy bear toast, they'd probably take a bite. So just, you know, trying those types of things, and they can help you make it. And then here's a bingo card. Did anyone see my dojo post last week? Yeah. This is a great way to get your kids involved at the grocery store, and they check things off as they see them. And again, we talked about involving them in the process of getting food on the table, and that's a great way to do that. All right. So how to get variety. Remember, it takes time. This isn't going to happen overnight. This is really important, offering new foods with other foods you know they like. So if you think about it, the reason that your child might be picky is because a new food that they're never seeing before, that's kind of scary. They don't know what to think about it, and it can be overwhelming. And it can be really overwhelming if you present them with a plate of food and nothing they've ever seen before, or maybe they've seen it before, but they don't like it. So if you have a plate entirely of new foods, that is super overwhelming and scary for your child. So if you decide, hey, I'm going to try broccoli again, I'm going to do it. They've never liked it before, but I'm going to try it. But maybe you have, you know, mac and cheese, or you have a food as the entree that you know they like. That way that you know they're eating something, but you're offering something new. And so the plate isn't as daunting. Does that make sense? Cool. Okay. Also, we talked about how they don't need as much food as us. So something that can also be daunting for a child is if you give them a really big full plate of food, something that like an adult would eat. Instead, I would suggest using a smaller plate and placing a small amount of food on their plate. That way they feel like it's actually doable, that they can eat it. And then if they want seconds, they can definitely get seconds, but that way you don't need to put all the food on there at once. It's overwhelming. And then just thinking about this, that kids only need about a fourth of the food of an adult meal, or even letting them serve themselves is a great way to do it. That's what we used to do in the classroom. Unfortunately, now because of COVID, we're having staff portion, but that's a great, you know, way to have them do it too, figuring out how much they need. Respecting their choice. If they refuse something, that's their choice. And then we keep offering it. So just because they've never liked anything before, they may surprise you. And we will always want to keep offering and never give up that they're going to, you know, try that out. And then trying different textures and colors. Many children don't like food combined. They don't like things touching. That was me as a kid. But sometimes it's opposite. Sometimes they like things mixed. So just like playing with that, just like, you know, we talked about cooked versus raw, try mixing things, try unmixing things. Maybe they don't like the vegetable medley, you know, that you get, but maybe if you did everything separate, they would eat it. So just playing with it and seeing what works for your child. And then we talked about the no clean your plate club. That is no longer recommended because that causes anxiety, and we want kids to have a positive relationship. That food is a good thing. Okay, how to implement structure. So this is really important. Structure is really important when dealing with a picky eater. Does anyone try to keep your meals around the same time every day, or even your snacks? Awesome, it seems like a lot of you do. So that's great. That way your body actually starts to get hungry at that time if it's used to that. So I'd really recommend that. Also, does anyone make a point to turn off the TV, no phones at the table, that type of thing?
We
Yeah,
don't even
so
have our dining room tables in our kitchen. There's nothing in there. So
that's
there's
great.
no distraction.
I love that. I love that, because mealtime should be about the food, right? That needs to be the focus of mealtime, is food and being together. That's a great bonding time for your family too. So if you haven't already started doing this, I would really suggest turning off the TV, no homework while eating, try not to have dinner on the go or in the car. Just make the focus about eating and about talking about the food, about talking about your day, because kids get overwhelmed. So if there's a lot of things happening, then eating it's not the priority anymore. So making food the priority is really an important strategy. This is also kind of something that you might want to try, is giving a 10-minute heads up about dinner so they can mentally prepare that will be happening in 10 minutes. So if they're like drawing and then you tell them, hey, it's time for dinner, and then maybe that causes a tantrum because they want to finish their picture. But if you told them, hey, I told you 10 minutes ago it was time for dinner, they knew that was coming, and they're more likely to come when you ask them. So that might be something to try. Have the whole family sit together as an expectation. You should be eating the same foods. We talked about this, so modeling good behavior. It's also a chance for you to increase your variety. Talk about the foods that are being served, and then take your time. So try not to be at a rush. If you know you have to be somewhere, giving yourself extra time so you actually have time to eat is really important too. Okay, so I always debate whether or not to include this slide, and I'll tell you the reason. Has anyone tried like hiding fruits and vegetables and things? Yeah, and it's common. And there are pros and cons to it. I would say the pros are they're getting the nutrients from that thing, and that can like make you feel better that your child's getting what they need as far as vitamins and minerals are concerned. So that's the pro. I would say though the con is that if they don't know that they're eating something, then it's still unfamiliar in their eyes. So best case scenario, they're seeing like the whole fruit or veggie and they're knowing what they're eating. So then next time you give it to them, oh, it's not as scary. They remember that from last time. Does that make sense? So I think there's a time and place to do this. And you can do both this and presenting the fruit or vegetable whole. But if this gives you if this makes you feel better to kind of hide your fruits and vegetables sometimes to make sure that they're getting those, that's definitely something to try. I'll be emailing you a couple documents as well as a lot of recipes, which I'm excited for you guys to try out. Recipes will include like the black bean brownies. Has anyone tried that before? They're really good. You would have no idea they had black beans in them. Things like that. There's a meatball recipe with some vegetables in it. For one of our kids in the kitchen classes, we actually did this. We put pureed cauliflower in the mac and cheese, and it was so yummy. And I don't think one kid didn't like it. So just things like that to just try. Also, you guys, for coming to today's class, I actually got each of you a zucchini spiralizer. Well, I guess it's not a zucchini spiralizer. It's like just a vegetable spiralizer. You can do a bunch of different vegetables, but it's really cool. You just put the vegetable on there and you kind of do like a little twirl thing and it comes out as like spaghetti. And that's a great thing to try with your picky eater because spaghetti, they like that, right? They associate that with being good. And zucchini noodles, I was actually really surprised that kids were eating those. We tried that in a Kids in the Kitchen class. So that'll be kind of fun for you to try. Definitely let me know how it goes. And then smoothies. Smoothies are a great way and an easy way to add some veggies. And I know sometimes it turns the smoothie green, which they may or may not like, but making it fun, calling it like the green monster smoothie or something, you know, they might want to try it. So here are just some fun ideas to do that. Okay, so we're almost done. We will definitely I'm trying to leave enough time for questions. As you know, we got to do a post test at the end of every class, just make sure you guys are learning something and that these classes are valuable. So I actually need everyone to respond to these. So if you wouldn't mind writing your answer in the chat, that would be the best way for me to document it. So first question is, and just write a yes or no in the chat. After taking this class, will you usually or always consider health when choosing groceries? So when you're grocery shopping, will you take health into consideration? Awesome. And then along with that, after taking this class, will you commit to trying a new healthy recipe at home? So like I mentioned, I'll be sending you, I think like 5 different recipes regarding kind of incorporating more fruits and veggies. So you do commit to trying at least one of them. And even better, would you, commit to having your child help you make it? Because we talked about the importance of that too. So that would be even better. So just write your answers in the chat. Thank you so much. Now, and I know you all have like specific questions, so I want to make sure there's enough time for that. I'm going to leave this up here. Here are all of my upcoming classes for the rest of September and October. I would really, really recommend the Kids in the Kitchen class for you all who are dealing with this, but also my other classes are super fun too. So same thing, you have my email now, so you just email me with what class you're interested in. But now I'm going to open it up to questions. I'm actually going to stop the recording now. 1 second, everyone.